Good morning, everyone. I know everyone's kind of been filtering in here. If you're here for fall and winter leagues, I am so excited for you to be here. This is the place to be, right? So, moving along, our agenda, as you probably imagine, is to understand how to set up your leagues and some tricks and tips for setting up your teams, especially with the fall and winter coming around. I know summer camps, as a former programmer, right? That was our focus: summer camps, and summer programs. And now typically we're looking into how to run our leagues for the fall and our winter, right? So I am your moderator today. My name is Nick. I'm a customer success manager here with RecDesk. I'm actually based out of Maryland, as Jen kind of touched on, right? She's a little up there in the home office in Connecticut, so I get to see the lovely weather a little bit before she does. Okay. As we go along, please be sure to drop any questions you have or thoughts regarding league into the chat, and I will either answer you in chat or filter those questions along to Jen, whichever is going to benefit our group as much as possible. As I alluded to, Jen is our wonderful tech support and Q&A manager who knows a lot of the in and outs of our software, and she is going to be our presenter today talking about the leagues feature. So with that said, Jen, are you ready to take over the screen here?
I am.
All righty.
Oh, I have to wait for you to stop share.
Yep. Here we go. It's all yours.
There we go. All right, everyone. So whenever I go over any of the league refreshers, I like to start out by reminding you of a couple of core things. The first one is please make sure your facilities tab already has all of the locations you're going to use for your league built in. And what I mean by that is I want to see every field, if it's courts, we need to know every court. Having all of that listed here is extremely important because that's how we're going to be able to build the scheduling later. So please make sure that anybody who has questions about putting in your facilities, reach out to us at the support@recdesk.com email, or if you're still in the onboarding process, please reach out to your onboarding manager. We also have articles here in the support center for that. The second piece I like to review is programs, because building your sports programs for registration is going to make your league process so much easier. And I know everyone has their own way of doing their registration. However, this makes sense regardless of what sport you're playing. I always encourage that your registration for the program is the right age range or the right gender or whatever the filter is for the league that you're getting ready to play. For those of you who have, baseball going on or softball going on, setting this up as 8U baseball is important, because then instead of you guys having to figure out later who are the participants that really belong in 10U or they really needed to be in the lower age range, you can actually ensure the right age range is signing up per you. Then you would just pick your program type. If you wanted to pick a secondary subtype, you can as well. Custom program codes I don't see used very much when it comes to sports. However, you could use this if you have sports at multiple locations. If you're a bigger city, maybe you have baseball registration that goes for the east end of town, and then the west end of town is a different registration because you have enough kids to split it like that. You could use the custom program code to mark that information. I don't often see drop-in support used for our sports. However, basketball is one that I've seen it be used more frequently, especially with wanting to make sure that you're doing contact tracing, checking people into gyms, things like that. If you wanted to check people in to any of these types of programs later, please be aware you need to check that drop-in support and change it to the yes pre-registration required or with no pre-registration required. Most sports, I imagine, would be yes with pre-registration required. That way they sign up ahead of time. On the program side of things, You don't necessarily need to show the schedule. The only time I really see the program schedule for your sports registrations visible is if you're using that schedule as your practice, because you have all the 8U kids practice every Tuesday, and they take over all the fields down at this park. Unless you're doing something like that, uncheck these boxes. The leagues tab is where we're going to build the rest of the schedule, so you don't want that visible on the program side. Make sure you set your enrollment begin and end dates. You can set specific times to these as well. Type in your description and make sure you put in notes and check off the box for including notes on receipt. This is a great place for those of you who have specific shoes that are required, something like oh, I forget what it's called. Nick, please help me with this one. Is it the no black sneaker or something like that? What's the
No, non-marking soles?
Thank you. Or, if baseball cleats cannot be metal, you can put that information in here. And in fact, as somebody who coaches in sports, things like reminding them what shoes they can and cannot wear, it's really important to post that. And putting that here is always a good spot and a good reminder for the guardians or parents that are putting these children into these programs. Make sure you select the general ledger code that's associated with this. And then this allows you to set all of your demographic information. So if your sports is gender restrictive, you would choose the gender here. If you can only have a certain number of people registered, you can set that enrollment maximum. Now, grade minimum and maximum are only visuals, but for something like an 8U, where most of these kids have to be between the 7 and 8 years of age, I can type today, I promise, then this will actually enforce the right registration. Now, I just pick on April 1st because that's what our particular Little League uses. So all of you have some date that's listed somewhere for those U's. That's the date that you would want to enter here. And make sure you're using the current year, because our system is going to calculate based on how old they are now and does the math in the back end. This is also the perfect location to ask questions like, ask if you want to know if the parent or guardian wants to be a coach, a team parent, or a volunteer. Now, I like drop-down options for this, but this is one of those things where I've seen if you would like to be a coach, using the text box. If you would like to be a coach, enter adult's name, something like that as well. This way, during registration, you can get that feedback for what adults are going to sign up. But you can still do drop-down options for things like the jersey size or the shorts, things like that. The one thing that I have heard feedback for, and I like to show you both examples, is please make sure that if your public doesn't know that YS means youth small, that it is better to type it out so that they know what size they're selecting. And you can list out each different size and separate it by a semicolon. Make sure certain fields are required, like if you want to know the jersey size during the time period they enroll, make sure you select that box. This is also a great location if you care or would like to ask questions of the team, like who have they played with in the past, what have they played before, what grade they're either entering or coming out of. I know that school year term tends to be something that I hear the phrase for often. So anything like that that you need to gather from the registration, you can add that as a custom question. Some people will collect this on flex forms. Just note, I prefer things like jersey size and the coach fields to come out as custom form questions, because once you assign the child to a team, you can export the information, including these custom form questions, in one report. Whereas if you have that on a flex form, you will have to pull twice and combine the reports. This does need to have a schedule date to it in order for people to register online. And the way that I usually recommend people register, add a date here, is pick the very last day that you would allow a parent to register, or I'm sorry, a parent or guardian to register. And what I mean by that is if registration were to close, let's just say September 15th. Obviously that's really close, but we're just using that as an example. If the season doesn't start until October 1st, do you let kids still register if they come to you and the parents say, hey, I'm so sorry I missed registration. I know practices just started, but can my child still participate? If you have that in mind, think about what that day is. That's the day that you want to show on this program. And you don't necessarily need time or a facility. Make sure you save it before going to your fees. And we all know that fees are one of those. You can either build it by resident, non-resident. So if you have different price based on where they live, you can have that different value shown here. Show the fee on the portal. And if you hit show advanced options, you can also put two different fee values in here. So if you allow the price to be $55 up until September 15th, but after September 15th, you want the price to go up to $65, you would just need to make sure you post that this fee, the higher rate, becomes effective the day after this one ends. You can also restrict this by memberships. I know some of you do have that type of requirement. Make sure you select the restrictions and show those fees on portal. I don't often see add-ons used except in the case of something like field hockey, where I know the first timers pay a little bit more money for some of that equipment. Please make sure if you have any of that type of purchase that they may need to do during the checkout process, that you add that here to the add-ons, the add-on fees, and that you have a fee name that's going to make it so that they know what it is that they're purchasing. So I'm going to pick on ballet shoes just because it was the first example. And next you want to go to your forms tab, add any forms that you would like here, waivers, parent and player code of conducts. Going to remind everybody that if you have not done one of those parent or player code of conducts, please reach out to us. We know we have a bunch of customers who may be in this meeting right now and listening to me who would totally understand where I'm coming from with that it is worth adding. And you can make that form new each time or shared and hit save. This is the important first step. Creating those programs per registration and per age group. Now, I'm going to go a little bit of a step further because I've heard from some of you that you have all of 8U registering under 8U, but the reality is you have two versions. I call it competitive and rec, and we know what I mean by that. When you have that two different version breakdown, it may be better for you to have your program registration based on whether they would like it to be competitive or whether they would like to be just regular rec. That way you get a better idea of how many kids want to play the competitive versus the rec, and it's easier for you to to do the separation once you reach the Leagues tab. Now, once you're going into the Leagues tab to build your league, you're going to click on Add New League. Choose the season, select the category. I always name my program based on the way that the program is named here. Just kind of copy and paste it. That way, if it's something like 8U, basketball registration, basketball, then it just pulls in nice and neat. The start and end date here, I want to clarify something. If you make the start date here, this has nothing to do with the schedule. This has more to do with it being visible on the current leagues list on the community site. So if you want them to be able to quickly view the league schedule beforehand, just make that start date well before the league is actually playing. And here you can select all these options, including changing the color per league you build. Sorry about my cough, everyone. And then we have the Teams tab, where you can add a team. Now, we do have divisions. I greatly discourage using divisions unless you truly need that. That was where I brought up the idea of having rec and competitive. It makes it a little bit more problematic when you build here. On the league info tab, you would have to add another division here. If you just wanted to say the division name to be 8U instead of default, please just click on the edit and change the name from default to 8U. The only real reason to add divisions is if this is the area that you're breaking it down by either the ages or what grades they're part of, or any of those. You need a larger pool of kids to then build your teams out. In fact, Little League, for those of you who do T-ball, we actually have built out 2 different levels for coach pitch in my own league, where we have one that's meant for the kids who are just leaving T-ball that aren't really ready for the more competitive style coach pitch. And then the older coach pitch, the kids were getting ready to go over to the kid pitch leagues. That's another good example of having your multiple divisions. But you want to build your teams out next. And when you build your teams, if you don't know the names of the teams, but you know how many teams you're going to have, you can come here and just enter them as team 1, name them with numbers, you can name them with letters, whatever's easiest for you. Now, I will stay here for one moment to just make everyone aware of something. When we get into the schedule tab and into the auto scheduler, one option is only visible when you have an even number of teams. And I'll explain it when I get there. And the reason I like to just pause here to explain it is if you know you have an odd number of teams, but you need to make sure the teams play the same number of games. We sometimes, one option I usually recommend is adding in a fake 4th team and calling it bye week or something along those names. That way, that particular week, that team is having a practice week or an off week. On the coaches tab, you're going to be able to assign the coach by selecting them from the drop-down. So we're going to make Maureen the coach here. And if you make this person a league admin, what that means is that instead of just seeing team 1's roster, she'd be able to see all the teams' rosters. And you can even put in here what role they're playing. for the team. When you get here later, this becomes a great area to email all your coaches. When you have information specific for the basketball group, you can email them all at once or shoot a text message over. The Players tab. This is where we're assigning them to the teams. The button is right here. One thing I always point out first is this filter. It will default to all. I like to assign them with my team showing set to unassigned. The reason being is because I like to be able to go through and say, these are the kids that I want on team 1. And then I like my list to get shorter so that way when I finish assigning, the last group of people that I see here should be going to the very last team. So that then I have that short list, I can hit that select all, and I can just assign everybody. When I go back to all, I can see everybody listed out here with their team names and all the basic information. Now we do have player ratings for those of you who like to do player ratings so that you can make sure that teams have a good mix of the 5-star players and the 1-star players. Same concept, you're just selecting the participants and then choosing their rating and setting that within the system. Next is the Schedule tab. This is the one we tend to get the most amount of questions with. And the setup for this is the most important piece. The first step is making sure these filters are set. So you want to select all of your locations that you're going to use. So I'm going to pick on my PowerUp training fields right here. And you can select as many locations as you need. And then the default game duration. So if a basketball game for this age range, if I want to make sure I block out an hour and 15 minutes. I choose 1 hour, set the minutes. Even if it's 1 hour, please make sure you set it to 0, otherwise it will not set. And once you've hit set, you can either add games individually or we're going to use our auto scheduler. So these are the game options we have available. The first one is the number of times teams play each other. That's the default. That one will appear regardless of if you have an even number of teams or an odd number of teams. Each team plays the same number of games is only visible with the even number of teams. Games per day, limiting 1 game per day. I tend to see that with all the youth games, but if you have a tournament weekend or if you're scheduling like pickleball or any of the adult games, please feel free to use our fill all available time slots per day option. And then on the next step, this is when we're saying that the fields are available. So if we're saying that the season begins in October, and I'm just going to be safe and says it'll run through all the way through till December if I need those dates. And let's just say I want it to start at 10 a.m. every week on Saturdays. And that's when training field 1 is available. I would click here for adding the time slots. Now, if training field 1 is only available at that time, but I know I also need the training field 2, but training field 2 isn't available until 11 a.m. That is all I need to do is change those options up here and hit add time slots. That'll fill all the options in here. And if any of these days happen to be a holiday or a day that you know that the gym is going to be closed or the fields are closed, anything along those lines. On this screen here is where I want you to click day actions and either reschedule them to a different day or just remove it as an option. And then, then you click next step and create schedule now. Now, if you've given yourself enough time slots, this is what you're going to see. Is it'll schedule all of your teams, who's playing who, at what field, and at what time. This box here for showing schedule conflicts, if you're making a lot of leagues and they may share fields, if this box is checked off and you accidentally had this training field 1 used for 10U during that time period, then you would see a notification. So you would be able to go into that edit schedule and change it to either a different time or a different day. Now that edit view is also where we could come in and we can post the final score. And that'll update the team's standings. If games get canceled due to weather, you can remove the days here, or you could reschedule them here as well. Now, the big thing that I like to bring up is for basketball, is I understand that for games like basketball and for a few other sports, you tend to have a little bit of a bracket period at the end of the regular season, where you do the top 2 teams, you know, the top 4 teams, single elimination in order to have your champion. For those of you who have that type of scheduling, after you do this piece, which is their basic core scheduling, please go back to the Teams tab and hit Add New Team. Now I like using the phrase of playoff team. Whatever phrasing makes it best for you. Some people will use placeholder. But what that allows you to do is go back to your schedule tab and click edit schedule and add a game. And you can add preemptively knowing that you want the first playoff game to be this day and this time. So we're using those placeholders and we're blocking off that court. The reason I like showing it to you at that point is because at the end of the day, when you're getting ready to mark who those teams are, you'll be able to click on edit. And as you know that team 1 won, so they're the first one that's going to be on this list, you can go ahead and click save, and that'll update it here right away. And then when the other team is ready, you can update that as well. A few cool things to bring up because I like to show them off. You can not only print the schedule here and from within each team and print their rosters, but you could contact the whole league right from the actions on the info page. And something that I'd like to bring up is our CRM Plus feature. If you're helping somebody build a league for your organization and you need it to be verified by somebody else, please come to the tasks area after you've started that build and hit add new task. Please check to see if this league is good before we tell the public. And I can assign Nick to this and say, I need him to check it. Not on a holiday. I need him to check it by that date. and notify him via email. That'll send him an email telling him to please come check this league. It'll have a hyperlink. He'll be able to check this box off once he's completed it. You could also use the notes section if you'd rather just write notes back and forth to each other. So for those of you who are used to this, it's where you just start doing the @ symbol and their name, and you'll be able to send a message to them this way. This is where you could record things like if it was a phone call, meeting, email. If there's documents associated with this league, please make sure you click on Upload Document here, and you can either drag and drop them to upload, or you see the other options here. But now that kids have been assigned teams, if I go to this particular program, and I go to the roster tab, I can click on roster actions, export full detail to Excel, and let's just say I just need to do the shirt order. So I would just need the last names, none of this information, and to pause here, custom questions here. These are profile fields. So for those of you who needed custom profile fields, like silver sneakers numbers, or if you're doing demographic data when they create profiles, that's this option. You want to make sure under registration information, you're selecting custom form questions. That's going to be where you're asking them for their t-shirt size. Now you don't need to pull all these options for leagues. I'm going to just so you can see how it exports. And this would allow them to be able to know in a quick filter what the shirt size is and what the team is to be able to place your shirt orders. Now I am going to pop over to the community site because I want to show you a couple things with this. When they are logged in as a user, on the household calendar or within their own calendar, they're going to see their games and they're going to see which players are participating in those games. And this is from a household perspective. So if a parent or a guardian has multiple participants, it will show them the different names of who's participating where. I'm going to log out real fast and I'm going to show you from the instructor side, the coaches. If you allow your coaches the ability to log in, hang on, I think I attached. They'll be able to see any leagues that they're participating in here. If they're involved in multiple leagues or multiple age ranges, and let's just say that they're the coach for 8U and for a 10U team. If they need to cancel practice and they happen to do the 8U and then the 10U right back to back, right on this screen, they'd be able to email multiple leagues at the same time. Or they'll be able to click in. I did not assign myself a team. They'll be able to log in, view the standings, view the schedule. And I may have to click out and back in for my roster to fill in. And they'd be able to view their roster. Now, this coach login is something they can do on their phone. So if something happens to to Ava, when she's there, coach would be able to log in, click on the profile, quickly see the contact information or the emergency information that's built into that profile. They would also be able to just email or text that group of players that are participating with their team. And please keep in mind that on the calendar itself, you can filter by just your league games that you have going on. So if you ever wanted to just print out a calendar for just your leagues, add that filter in for league games so that when you go to do that print, it's just for the league games that you have up and coming. Did we have any questions that might have come in, Nick?
I was responding to one from Lisa in regards to, she asked about something along the lines of an audit or a summary to confirm that all games were scheduled with the appropriate teams divided between home and away and number of games. I hadn't hit send yet, Lisa, so I apologize, but we don't have that feature currently. Jen, I'm not sure if you know if that's something in development. Otherwise, that would just be something we would add as an enhancement request. Is that correct?
We do have an enhancement request for that. And I will tell you, I apologize. I forget the name of that enhancement, but Lisa, if you could just, if Nick, do you know what organization she's with?
I believe, she's down in Alabama. I will make sure to get that information here. Lisa, if you just want to put that here in chat, I can add you to that enhancement request list. And then going off of that, Jen, is perfect timing. Molly has asked, how do coaches access the coaches login screen? Oh,
that's a great question. And I like to actually tell you guys this in a few ways, because sometimes I've found that we can help you out by just giving you a little extra redirect button up here. On the community site, coaches will click the sign in button and they have to scroll down. See how this one says sign in with your community account, and there's another login instructor coach volunteer. They need to switch views to this login. If you do a lot of league stuff or a lot of access where your coaches are getting access, or if you have instructors that constantly have access to your programs, if you want them to have an easier time getting there, please let us know. We can always create a shortcut on your page to make that an easier clickable button.
And then I actually was just a direct message here, a question, Jen. Someone was looking to know if they give discounts to coaches' children when they register. Is there any way they can set it up so that they can give those coaches' children a discounted price or a cheaper price?
So this is one of those things where I word it as, it depends on how truthful your public is. And I word that as somebody who coaches her nephew. If you make it public, you can add a second fee within the program. That would be something like, you could have individual coaches child and have a discounted rate be listed here. The problem is unless you have your coaches register ahead of time in something like a membership, you can't restrict that fee. So you'd leave it a little bit open. I will tell you that I know that a lot of leagues that I've worked with and that I'm part of have kind of done this a little bit backwards, where coaches are getting refunded, for lack of a better phrase, that discount for their child participating halfway through the season. That way they can make sure that the parent or guardian actually participates as a coach for the entirety of the season for the discount to apply. So it really depends on how you want to build this. Um, that's, and I hope that makes sense to everyone, because it really has become very variable about what your public is like. I have some groups that they just automatically refund people to the credit card. I have other groups that what they do is they will utilize our online payment option here. And if the entire sports program was $100, but if they're a coach, they only have to pay 60. Sometimes they'll have it set up like this so that parents can select to pay the $60 at checkout, and that you guys would just clear the remaining $40 balance because of the fact that they're a coach. Nick, do you think that made enough sense, or should I clarify that more?
No, I think that was a very solid walkthrough in terms of providing a discount to coaches' children. It really comes down to your trust in your demographic, right? If they're going to go through and how they're looking to get them registered for their programs and how comfortable you feel with setting them up. So no, I thought that was a very good explanation. Now, a quick question from Molly, Jen, is do coaches have to set up a separate account from the community account for the coaches to log in?
So the coaches don't make their own account. You actually need to make the account for them. On the admin tab, personnel volunteer list, you need to select add new person. The required information is pretty simple. They just need to have a first name, a last name. They need to be a coach within our system to connect to a league, but an instructor to connect to a program. I just like to say that out loud to clarify things, as I know some of you, especially some stuff like T-ball, or if your league is really just more a learning experience, that you may just run it through your program. If you do, make sure they're an instructor so they get connected there. Enter their email address, and you need to check this box off to allow login. That way you can put a first-time password in here. That's the information you need to create for them in order to start assigning them. It's not the same credentials that they use to log in as a community member for security reasons. Now, the cool thing though, just so you're aware, is that at any point in time, you'll be able to go into that person's profile and see all the different things that they've been a coach for, all the different programs they've been connected to, as well as we do have this nice area where you can store if you have their background check on file, or if you just wanted to make sure that you knew that their background check was completed and said that it was good for this period of time. You can check this box off to just mark it as on file. That way you know you have it somewhere in-house. And that's a searchable field. Tags are another awesome thing for coaches because you can filter them here. Who's your baseball coaches? Who's your soccer coaches? Who's your basketball coaches? And that way at the end, you know, at the start of the season, or when you know that the season's getting started, on your admin personnel volunteer list, you'd be able to come in here and filter and say, I want to know, I want to reach out to all of these coaches, and see how it gives me a much shorter list so that I can click that actions and I can just email this group and say, hey, the season is getting ready to start again. Are you interested in being a coach again? Or the background check. You can filter and look by those who are getting ready to expire or they expire soon. So if you're looking for people whose background checks expire in 90 days, we've got someone who pops up. You can then action and email that group or that specific individual and say, your background check for us is about to expire. If you wish to continue being a coach volunteer with us that you need to hear the steps. Because I'm sure every one of you have different steps for what background check information you need from your customers. All right. Do we have any other questions out there?
Not at this time, Jen. Tracy, I am looking to respond to you, but since it is relatively lengthy, I'm going to reach out to you via email if that's okay with you, unless you'd like to hop on a phone call with one of us. Otherwise, there are no other questions coming through via chat at the moment, Jen.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave the room open in case you guys have any questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, everyone.